Welcome to Stand Out from the Crowd, the podcast dedicated to helping professionals and leaders amplify their voice, impact, and influence. Are you ready? Let's go.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Bonjour, salam alaikum. How are you doing, beautiful people? So, welcome to a new live episode of Stand Out from the Crowd, the podcast dedicated to helping leaders amplify their voice and influence. Because as leader, that's what we want to do. We want to have a great impact and we want to build and leave a long-lasting legacy, right? So to do so, every week I have the pleasure of inviting a standout guest, leaders in their area of expertise, who come and share their story, their experience, the ups and downs, the real stories behind what it takes to become a leader and to have an impact on people. And today, our guest is Kimi Sokhi. So, Kimi is the Regional Health and Wellbeing Manager at AXA Gulf, where she leads the Health on Track initiatives that focus on holistic well-being and preventive health care. And given the past 2 years that we have been through, we know how much it is important and how essential it has become to place the employee's health and wellness in the workplace at the center of everything that we do as a business. Soki is a lifelong learner and avid reader. She wants to be part of a revolution to make workplaces more human through emotional intelligence and empathy. We're going to talk about it. She is deeply passionate about employee engagement, corporate well being, learning design and delivery, and culture creation. And this is all we are about here. She is a qualified engineer who has enjoyed 12 years a 12 years career as a management and IT consultant before switching career to follow her passion. And this is a topic that comes back often here on this show, after building a beautiful career, how do you make the shift? How do you follow your passion? How do you follow your heart? This is also something that we're going to talk with Kimi. Her certifications now include a registered nutritionist, coactive coach, certified HR professional, trained mindfulness instructor, and project manager. Wow. So I hope you are getting very excited, and please help me welcome Kimi Sokhi. Hello, Kimi. How are you doing?
Hi, Doreen. Good morning.
Good morning, good afternoon. First, we have a beautiful international community. For some of you, it's early morning. For some of you in Dubai, it's late evening. So thank you, everyone, and thank you, Soki, for accepting to Kimi to be a stand-up guest for today's show. So my first question to you: how are you doing today?
Really well. Yeah, really good.
Very good. Yes, that's what we like to hear. So it looks like you had two lives in one life. And that's what I love about my guests, right? And I'm sure you probably have many other lives that we won't talk about today. And that's the beauty of being a leader, but also having the strength and the courage to follow our heart and our passion. So, Kimi, tell us a little bit, how was your shift from being a successful IT consultant, engineer, having a great career, and then deciding, like, from one day to the other, or maybe the process took longer to finally have the courage, because it takes some courage to follow your heart and your passion. How was the process?
Yeah, it's been a while now since that happened, but I essentially, I'm an engineer and I went to school to do software engineering, and I worked as an IT consultant for many years. I think it was like 12 or 14 years back in Canada and the US. And um, the many years into my career, I was successful. I was good at it. I enjoyed many aspects of it. but I didn't really gain like a sense of fulfillment.
Mm.
And um, coincidentally, at the same time, I was traveling a lot every week, actually. The life of a consultant was that I was traveling from Monday to Friday or Monday to Thursday to different locations in North America, different cities for client work. And I went through a lot of health issues during that time. So I was very sick. I was having repeat infections. I was always at the doctor's office. I was on antibiotics for almost like, I would say like 2 years, almost solid. And like my body was not happy with me because the schedule, the hours were really long. It was a very demanding job, as consulting can be, which is where a lot of young people, that's how they start their careers. And it's a great experience, but it can be really hard on you, and there's no work-life balance. So working really, really long hours in these different cities, coming home on a Friday night, just having 2 days to do your laundry and to try to eat something that's not from a restaurant and at home, and then pack again and then travel again on Monday. So during that time, because I kind of went through these health issues, I eventually, because like traditional medicine didn't really have an answer for me, I ended up seeing a naturopathic doctor, and then he referred me to a nutritionist.
Okay.
And it was through cutting out certain things in my diet and really making a drastic change in the way that I was eating, that I was able to actually fix the repeat infections that I was getting, and the fact that to get away from the sickness that I was experiencing all the time. And because I kind of went through that journey, it inspired me to look into nutrition a little bit more. And then I ended up researching local schools in Toronto, which is where I lived for most of my life. So, which is where you are. So I ended up, researching local colleges that were offering nutrition courses, and I ended up auditing a couple of classes, just sitting in on the classes. And the first time I went in and sat in on one of the classes, it just changed my life. Like I felt so much at home. I fell in love with what the teacher was talking about, and I finally felt like, oh, I found my tribe. Like these are my people.
Mm.
So that's how it happened. I knew that I wanted something different. I was on the lookout for a career change, but then kind of through this health journey, it took me on a path where nutrition just ended up making a lot of sense to me. And I think as an engineer, nutrition is based in science. It's rooted very strongly in, there's a lot of science behind what we eat, and the food that we eat contains vitamins and minerals, and there's reactions that are happening in the body, and deficiencies show up as different diseases. So all of that just really made sense to me, and I really liked. I mean, the next couple of years that I spent studying it was just really one of the best times ever of my life to study all this stuff. Yeah.
That's really interesting. And so through your own story, your own personal experience, you realized how much like self-care and health and wellness, well-being at work is important. No matter what your workplace looks like, it's really important to be able to take care of yourself. And so I guess you realize if this is happening to me, it must be happening to other people, right? So this is where you transition then to focus on helping people getting well, focus on their health and wellness, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what happened. I realized if I'm going through this, then many other people must be going through it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Interestingly enough, like after I graduated, I worked at a couple of clinics in Toronto, and I was in private practice, sometimes doing stuff with gyms and stuff like that. But then I realized that my reach was very limited through private practice. As much as I enjoyed working with people one on one, I also realized that I have all of this really valuable experience working in the corporate world. So if I can bring this back to the corporate world, I can reach more people. I can have a larger impact. So that's when I also started pivoting a little bit, about a year into private practice. I realized, okay, you know what, I actually do want to come back into the corporate world and focus on how this knowledge can be useful for employers and employees, so that people don't have to suffer like I did, because I really was suffering because of my job. It wasn't even
Mhm.
really, yes, there's different things that incept, disease and a misalignment in our bodies, or a lack of balance. But for me, it really was the lifestyle that I was living that was causing me to eat a certain way and not make the time for myself and all of that. And I know that I was not unique, that's just kind of the work culture in a lot of organizations, is work hard, play hard, or whatever they want to label it. But yeah, so that's where I made the pivot even more towards more coming back into the corporate world.
And actually, you were ahead of our time because little did we know that something called COVID would come and like turn our lives ups and down. And you mentioned it, like workplace culture used to be and then still is, but I feel like there is a shift that is happening, a major shift that is happening. But it was about work hard, play hard, or work hard and you will play later eventually, right? But the
Yeah.
focus was on the working part, not really considering the needs of employees, the well-being, the health, the mental health of their employees. And we know some for the biggest organizations, but also for the small and medium-sized companies, you see where they have high turnover, and you see where people are not productive because they are just like pushed beyond their limits, and no one care about what's happening in their head or in their heart. And so with the crisis that we went through for the past 2 years, people realize that this is not sustainable. We don't want to follow this work model or this culture anymore. Like, we are humans, we are employees, but before being an employee, I'm a human with basic needs, and my mental health matters, my well-being matters. So we see this big shift happening. So now more and more companies talk about it. Now, do all these companies talking about it do implement or have concrete actions, right, toward the well-being of the employees? But I feel like, and here in North America, we talk about the great resignation, where people now have found the strength, and have just realize that, okay, if I'm not fulfilled, if you don't care about my needs as a person, then I move on and I can go and say this is what's happening. So how you, from like being from the inside already for many years already, how did you how did you see this shift happening, and what's the major difference that you see in the corporate culture?
Yeah, it was really fascinating, wasn't it? Because I even noticed a shift like within the organization that I was working for previously, and the mindset changing around working from home or always being in the office, whereas before it was like very rarely would companies allow that type of flexible working, but suddenly everybody is offering it now, or it's become sort of an expected thing that organizations have to offer to stay
Mhm.
competitive because of the great resignation, as you said. Um, and what I think happened during the pandemic was really interesting, because there was suddenly we were all in the same boat. You know what I mean? Like managers, leaders, employees, everybody was all that we were all at home. We were all stuck at home. We all experienced some version or another of a lockdown, and we all went into each other's homes through Zoom or Microsoft
Yeah,
Teams or whatever.
and we saw
So
the kids, the family, and
exactly. So I think for the first time, like you're seeing like where your boss sits, and your boss is seeing where you sit to work, and they're seeing your kids running around or your pets, or maybe they see that you're alone all the time because you live alone, right? Um, so whatever the struggles were, whether that's childcare, mental health, loneliness, we were all sort of in the same boat, and we were literally in each other's bedrooms and living rooms. And I think that really humanized our coworkers, then the people that we work with, in a way that no team building event could have ever done
oh, for
that before.
sure. Oh, never. Yes, for sure.
And I think that because because leaders were now experiencing what their employees are experiencing at home, it was like a great equalizer in many ways. And I think that's why a lot of leaders suddenly woke up to the fact that, hey, if I'm struggling with my mental health, then employees must be struggling. And I can see on their faces through their screens that they're struggling. And therefore, we need to start putting programs in place to mitigate that and to support them. But I think, as you said, the big question now is whether we remember those lessons that we learned through the pandemic, and we take those learnings and those teachings that we learned, and don't try to go back to normal as normal was
Way.
before.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we don't forget all of these lessons, because I think that would be a real shame. And I can kind of see that happening. It's kind of mixed in Dubai, where there's a lot of sort of more traditional organizations and traditional companies and bosses that are very much wanting to go back to the way things were, instead of creating sort of a new reality based on what's happened in the last 2 years. So yeah.
But I do believe the companies across the world, wanting to go back to the old ways, or the what we used to call normal, won't be sustainable, won't be successful in the long run, because people are no longer accepting what's not acceptable to them, right?
Absolutely. And exactly, I think that they're going to struggle with attracting good talent. They're going to struggle with retaining good talent.
Yeah.
They may not see that immediately, but they're going to see it in time. So the cost is going to, that check will have to be cashed at some point.
Yes, exactly. And we have a couple of people. So I see many of you here watching the live. So thank you everyone for being present. If you have any questions, any comments, if you have any examples or experience that you would like to share with us, the time is now. So please use the comment section to share your thoughts and to see if you can just relate to what we are sharing today. We have Salah let me see, Al-Balushi, who says, awesome subject. Thank you. That's easy to have great subjects when we have awesome guests too, I must say. We have Nina. Hello, Nina, who is I think she's from Canada. Nina, where are you based? I think she's in Canada. And we have Salah also says, great conversation. So thank you. Keep your comments coming in, beautiful people. So now, you say that in your biography, you said that you want to be part of a revolution to make workplaces more human through emotional intelligence and empathy. So what does this revolution look like? Would you say that we have started this revolution, or how do you envision it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the pandemic was sort of a kick in the butt for a lot of organizations to start down that path. It really was a wake-up call for a lot of organizations. But I think it simply looks like companies and bosses treating their employees the way that they want to be treated. I don't know what happens to people when they get promoted. I don't know why there's such a split at the top where, people suddenly, once they are in a position of power, feel like they can mistreat employees, or employees are considered less than. And, the attitude, especially, I think, again, what I've noticed in this region as well is that you're being paid to do a job, so you don't have a right to complain about anything. We're paying you for our time, and that's enough, right? So getting a paycheck should be enough. You shouldn't have to worry about taking care of people's health and well-being and making sure that they're engaged. And I think that's really the wrong attitude to have, because if every leader reflected on what is the best boss that I ever had in my life, I'm sure, we would, if you came up with a list of the characteristics that made them such a great boss, it would have everything to do with empathy and emotional intelligence and them caring for their people and having a great vision, of course, but they're able to inspire people. And that's what I think, that's where I think companies a lot of the times miss the boat by treating employees, because if you treat employees with empathy and humanity, you end up with highly engaged, highly productive team members that actually want to go above and beyond. You don't need to push them. You don't need to, like with the carrots and the sticks analogy, you don't need sticks, when you have good carrots. That's motivation enough for them. So yeah, I think that's what an empathetic, humane workplace looks like, is just when you're able to put yourself in the shoes of others and treat others like you'd like to be treated. So it's very simple, but it's hard to do. Something that simple doesn't mean that it's easy, right? So yeah.
Very true. And actually, we see it more and more often where people will turn down jobs with a high pay salary, so a high paid job, to go to a lower paid job where they feel fulfilled and where they feel like this is a workplace where they want to belong to, right? So
Yeah.
the paradigm is changing, and employees' priorities are changing. It's not, of course, we all need to pay the bills and we're working to make money, obviously, but it's not the primary, this is not the top priority anymore. Now people
No.
are looking for fulfillment, they are looking for a work-life balance, no matter what it means to them, right? They are
Yes.
looking to contribute to something meaningful, to have an impact. And especially millennials and the younger generations, they would value the impact of the organization they work with way, way more and above the salary, right? So priorities are shifting, especially starting with us millennials and the younger generation. So companies who will succeed are the ones who will be able to understand that the priorities of people who can potentially become their employees are changing too.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's the other thing, is what organizations need to realize is that older generations put up with behavior that the younger generation will just not put up with anymore.
No
So
longer, yeah. So if you're
yeah,
watching this live, people, and you are running a business, a company, you are a leader, the time is now to, educate yourself of what the next top talents are looking for. That's it. I think it's quite simple. It's not easy to do, but I think we tend to make things more difficult than what they are, because
yeah,
it would just be willing, to open your mind and to understand that the world is evolving, workplaces are evolving, people's priorities are evolving too. So you got to be able to adjust, adapt, and evolve with your time. That's it.
absolutely, absolutely.
So I have been told, and I know that on your spare time you like to go on adventurous holidays. So tell us a little bit more about what does an adventurous holidays look like, and what's your best memories?
Yeah, I've been very lucky to have a lot of great holidays, to be honest. But I think to fit the definition of adventurous, I think it would be, I went to Everest Base Camp in 2014, I think 2014. And it was almost sort of like a very quick decision. Like I was just doing some research online. I just moved to Dubai. I was taking a break, so I didn't have a job at the time. And yeah, I just like booked a ticket and went to Nepal and decided to do this very difficult 12-day trek, which I absolutely had not trained my body for at all. And I was not really prepared for how physically challenging it would be, and also mentally challenging, really, because at the end
Mhm.
of the day, there's a physical part of doing something like that, but there's a huge mental component of waking up each day and deciding, okay, today's another day, I'm just going to take it day by day. And in fact, it wasn't even day by day. I mean, there was days where, because I was in so much pain, I had I think on day 3 or 4, I had a really bad injury in my right thigh, because of the trek. And it was, every day was like, okay, one step at a time,
Yeah.
not just a day at a time. But it was, really maybe one of the most memorable trips I've ever taken, because it was absolutely stunning. Like, the Himalayas are beautiful. And yeah, it was challenging, but it was absolutely one of the most beautiful places that I've ever been to in my life. And I'll always have very fond memories. And I'm glad I did it. I don't think, knowing what I know now, and knowing how hard it ended up being, if I had all the information and had done a lot of thorough research, maybe I wouldn't have done it. But the fact that, I just kind of quickly booked it and decided that this is the thing I need to do right now, I think sometimes being spontaneous works.
Oh, it does. And this is where you learn the most. What would be I'm sure like you have learned a lot of things about you first, during this trip. What is the biggest lessons that you think you have learned from this experience?
The trip was very, very good for self belief, to be honest with you. I was going through a very difficult time in my life when I decided to do the trek. I think that's why I decided to do it. I'd gone through a very difficult breakup. And I had, moved countries. I'd moved from Canada to Dubai. So it was a transitionary period in my life where I was trying to figure out who am I and what am I without this relationship, and et cetera, et cetera. And I think sometimes when we challenge ourselves, and I think also being in nature every day was very healing.
Mhm.
Um, and I think what I just learned about myself is that, yeah, like humans are capable of a lot. So once, if we decide that we want to do something, we really can. We can persevere through difficult periods. So I think it was just the right thing at the right time, because it helped me believe in myself again. So it was a very special trip from that perspective, from an emotional perspective. Yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah, you just wanna, yeah, you are motivating me. I don't know if it's motivating you watching, but to try, to give it a try, to do something out of the ordinary. So, but we should do that. That should be mandatory once a year at least, to push ourselves outside of our comfort zone and to go experience something that we never thought we could do and we would do in our lifetime. I think we would learn so much more about who we are as people. And I do believe also the more we know about ourselves, the more we are able to lead with empathy, and to understand others and to have a greater impact, because it all starts from within anyway.
Absolutely. Very
And
true words, Jane. Yeah.
and we have a comment here from Nina who says a hybrid way of working is now of big interest, also for men, not only for women. So I do hope that the hybrid way of working will become a standard. And actually, that's very interesting. Thank you, Nina, for your comment, because I was reading an article that says more and more and more since with the pandemic. So now we can say we are post pandemic, hopefully. Um, that more and more men through this transition period realize that they want to be a stay-at-home dad, right? And but our culture is not ready and is not prepared for that, being our society as a whole, or companies culture is not ready for that yet. But there is a need here also from men who realize that it's cool to be working from home, because they don't have to sacrifice their family anymore. They can still do the job and enjoy their kids and their family. So that's very true, and this is what is becoming the new normal, in my opinion. The hybrid way of working, that's becoming the standard.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's all for us today. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching us. If you have any questions, you are watching the replay, leave your comment and questions in the comment. We read and answer all of them. Uh, Kimi, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your story with us. I like having those type of conversation, because from the outside, we don't realize how humans leaders are. And actually, when we learn more about you, when we learn more about your story, your experience, it's a way of motivating others to become the leaders they were meant to be. Oh, it wasn't easy, she wasn't, I mean, she had a career before, so if she did it, I can do it too. And that's really the objective of this daily this weekly conversation, is to have an opportunity to learn more about what it takes to become a leader. And the journey to leadership is not easy. We all have ups and downs. Even when it looks perfect from the outside, there is always a journey that every single one of us go through. So thank you so much, Kimi, for sharing your story with us.
Most welcome. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you, and maybe I'll see you in Toronto someday.
When you come to Toronto, please tell me, say hi.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I will see you next week. Bye bye.
Take care.